So welcome to today's podcast. I'm Pat Soldano, president of Family Enterprise USA and Policy and Taxation Group. If you don't know who we are, we advocate for family-owned businesses across the United States, all sizes of business and all industries, at a national level in Washington, D.C. We work on tax and economic policies that affect the families of those businesses. So today, I'm really delighted to have with us John Zaruka, founder of Wedgewood Weddings, and his son, Bill Zaruka, the current CEO of the company, which is now a $250 million Wedgewood wedding and event enterprise. If you're not familiar with Wedgewood, it operates weddings in 80 venues in 9 states, hosts over 11,000 weddings a year with over 1 million guests, and employs over 2,000 people. In 1986, John and his wife, Linda, founded Wedgewood and then later Z Golf Food and Beverage Services. Today, their son, Bill, who's with us today, is Wedgewood's CEO. Bill's been a proven leader and entrepreneur his entire life with over 30 years of food and beverage experience, starting with large brands like NBC Universal and the Mirage Las Vegas. He's seen the family business grow over the past 25 years from one location in Ventura to the nation's #1 wedding venue operator, which is pretty amazing. Today, we're going to talk about this amazing family business journey and how they grew it, how they worked with private equity to take the business to the next level, and how it not only benefited the business, but also the employee. So John and Bill, welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Pep.
So as I'm opened, I mentioned that there are some amazing statistics. I'll repeat them. Wedgewood handles 11,000 weddings a year and has served over 1 million guests. This seems incredible to me. So I'll start with you, John. Can you tell us about the founding of Wedgewood and how has this journey been along the way?
Well, obviously, it's been exciting. But my wife will tell you that I kind of always had a vision that there was an opportunity in the banquet space for a chain of banquet facilities. I've always felt that. So I was without a job in 1986. I was in the hotel business. I'd been vice president of a company, but I wanted to stay in California. I got tired of moving. We had 2 young kids. And so I said, let's find something that we can stick around it. And I ended up finding a real fancy restaurant at a real public golf course, which not in a really good location. It made no sense. And I said, what happens to these facilities? Now, I grew up around public golf. My dad and I ran a little beach concession and a little pitch putt golf course between it. And I played a lot of public golf as I moved all across the country in the hotel business. And they usually become dumpy banquet rooms. Well, in this case, it had just been remodeled. I said, well, this would be a pretty nice banquet room. It was for sale. It was a lease with the city, a long-term lease with the city of Ventura. I was able to negotiate that, and we started with no employees and no guests. We did have a snack bar. We took the plunge. We got a small business SBA loan, put all our money in it. But I was never really nervous about it because we had cash flow from the golf course. I said, well, if we work the snack bar every day, my wife and I, we can pay our mortgage. And that was the important thing, and stay in town. Well, after 6 or 8 months, I realized this was going to work. I did a lot of research and chased after all sorts of business in town personally. And Linda joined me. She was a legal secretary. And so we started our husband and wife business. The kids grew it. And I always thought there was a chance for expansion, but I got to do a lot of stuff. And we built that facility to, it was a nice little profitable operation. I think we were doing maybe $1 million in sales and generating pretty good income for our family at that time, as much as I would have been as a hotel executive. And we were very happy at that point, but I was getting bored. So I did a study into the golf industry and saw that there was no one doing any consulting for the golf industry. So I made myself a golf consultant for the golf industry, and before you know it, I'm writing articles all over, national articles, speaking all over Canada, US, and so on, and ended up, uh, having a lot of different clients. A lot of times they'd already spent their money by the time I got to them. It was kind of frustrating in that regard, but we had one of my clients who went to one of my seminars said, "John, a year later why don't you come and run one of our places?" And I said, "Well, I'll run two of them." And that was in Northern California. The Corsico, they're still in business. They helped us get started, and we made a partnership there. And then Bill brought us on. I brought Bill on. He left Universal. We said, let's make this. This looks like it could be a success. And every time we opened one, it did better than the last one. And we concentrated on the golf industry at that time because that was our in. The golf courses were perennially losing money. So that's how we started. And before you know it, the momentum kept building and building and building. And my vision that I had had many, many years earlier obviously was correct.
So, Bill, when did you join? John talked about that a little bit, but you were already into your career before you joined the company.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in a family business, the minute it's started, you join it in terms of, 10, 12, 13-year-old labor, washing dishes. I worked the snack bar. I did all that growing up through college, but then spent about 5 years outside of the family business. And then when he had the opportunity to have it kind of be a little bit more than it was just the single unit, I joined in 2002, right when we had decided to expand past the first location.
Okay, and now you're in a whole different place. And so, Bill, let's talk about this private equity story. You participated in private equity to kind of take you to the next level. So when did you first start thinking about private equity?
What had happened is, as we expanded, we kept looking at our profit and loss statement, and we were making a lot of money, but there was no money enough in the bank that we could enjoy it because we kept investing in the next place. So Linda and I started looking around for different options for capital contribution, so we could, whether it would be a big loan, private equity, partnership, or whatever. And then we started to look at private equity, and now Bill will tell you how we ended up with how we went about it and how we found a company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I think the main thing is anyone who's growing a business, if you want to grow it, it takes money. And, mom and dad were tapped out of, ability to get loans. And, we were looking at various options. I had, no money to contribute, was, younger, just starting a family and not established financially. And so, through a series of personal contacts and networks, we started making some phone calls and had eventually contact with 3 private equity groups that focused on founder family business models in which the owners are heavily involved entrepreneurs, but they haven't really crested into the next level of the middle market, and businesses doing 8 to 25, $30 million in revenue. And, we didn't go through a process. We didn't have an investment banker. We kind of just figured it out on our own. But ultimately, we were engaged and had a good relationship with a group out of Chicago called Prospect Partners. And the opportunity felt good. The partnership felt right. The culture and fit seemed to really work. And so, the deal was one in which, my mom and dad were able to retire debt and feel financially comfortable. We were able to create a succession plan in which, I was able to step up in ownership and equity without, coming out of pocket or getting into debt. And we had, not only financial partners, but a group of people that had helped other people like us take our businesses to the next level and had seen all the things that you needed to do in order to professionalize the operation, and grow the team beyond just the family and the founders, and ultimately lead us to that next level of success.
Well, Billy did say we looked on our own, but one of the things that I always tell people when it comes to private equity, and if they're going to consider it, make sure you have a strong legal advocate. We hired a company, Troy Gould, out of Century City. I could not find anybody in all of Ventura County, and I knew all the lawyers in Ventura County, the top guys. No one specialized in what is known as M&A, which I didn't know what it even was. So mergers and acquisitions, you have to have a specialist, and that is something that I would recommend anybody that gets involved in this kind of equity thing to do. Make sure you have a good lawyer.
So that's helpful. That's actually one of the questions I was going to ask. So, but Bill, now you're in the second part of this, right? You're in the second tranche of doing private equity. Both of you, I realize, are involved in this, but I think probably Bill's more involved in the day-to-day of it. So how is that different than the first time you went through? And maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the due diligence that you did.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think, to my dad's point, the first time we went through this, we didn't have an investment banker, and not only from a legal advisory perspective, but absolutely suggest you hire someone who has that experience, because, we were kind of learning on the fly. There was terms that we didn't really understand. And, we were fortunate that we kind of figured it out, and that our partners were kind of really good at educating us. And we did that investment deal back in 2014, and our partners just recently exited, just over a month ago. And it was, really a little over 11 years, pretty long for that industry, for a variety of different reasons. We were in the wedding business, and kind of right when maybe the time for them to exit and us get a new private equity partner, that's when COVID hit, and that was very challenging for the wedding business, especially with a density of properties in California. But they did what was called a continuation fund, which again was another thing we had no exposure to, and which allows them to extend the life of their investment group, and continue on past a normal hold period. But then about a year and a half ago, we hired an investment banking group, after a series of interviews, to just kind of see someone who would be able to best market and understand our business, our culture, and kind of our secret sauce. And then for the better part of a year, they focused on gathering data, understanding our business left and right. By the end, I was like, well, gosh, we should hire you guys, because this business as well as us. And then ultimately I spent maybe the first part of 2025, almost exclusively meeting with new private equity firms that have have bigger funds and are used to kind of managing companies in this next stage of growth that are more middle market companies with our size business, and ultimately going through that process, which was absolutely fascinating and super educating. But just recently landed with a new partner, TJC, out of New York. And real excited about the future. They have a lot of, unlike Prospect, they have a pretty robust operations management group to really support the business in a variety of aspects. And that's really kind of what we got from kind of the initial family business PE firm that did a great job of kind of taking our entrepreneurialism and professionalizing it and getting us to the next level, and then handing it over to the next group of PE investors and management that are kind of familiar with multi-unit national brands that can provide the next level of scale.
I think it's fascinating that you've had such a positive experience with private equity, to the extent that you're going through it again, because we've all heard the horror stories. It doesn't always work out that well. So what would you tell other family businesses that are thinking about what you all went through, which is getting capital infused into a business, and what those alternatives are? And private equity in your case has been a really, really good experience and a good alternative. What would you tell other family businesses?
Let me try that. I think Billy kind of mentioned it at the beginning. You got to have a company that understands your culture, has a lot of your same values. That's very, very important. And it turns out our partners, Prospect, we hit a winner with that. You need to delineate responsibility. they trusted us in the operations. We'd meet quarterly. We'd go over operations. They had some great comments and questions about it. It kept us on our toes. But for the most part, they let us operate, and they helped us in the banking area, in some of the areas that we're not experts in, sometimes in the insurance area, and so on. And you got to be very comfortable with the people you're dealing with right from the beginning. And I think we have a very, very good fit with the new company. They came out and met me. They asked to understand. They wanted to understand where we came from. So I think we're really comfortable with our new company as well, TLC.
TJC, yeah. Yeah, I think he's right on. I mean, you have to have a cultural fit. I think the horror stories, in my opinion, are isolated instances, but they scare family businesses away from this. You know, from the information I know and the people I talk to and the circles I'm in, you know, the private equity just sharpens your knife a lot faster and a lot quicker. To my dad's point, you know, you're dealing with incredibly smart people who have owned and scaled businesses before. They help prevent you making the mistakes, you know, that they've already seen others make. They hold you accountable. You know, when you're kind of the sole family business owner operator, you have, you know, there's not that group of advisory group it's sharpening your knife, that's holding you accountable, that's challenging you. And, you know, and then also they're kind of one step removed from the day-to-day operations, so they see things from a different light. And I think that's real important. I mean, certainly the biggest thing is in most private equity scenarios, you have to give up, you know, majority control of your business. That's not always the case, but it's more often than not is the case. And I think this may be the only thing that you just have to consider, that ultimately at some point your family is going to continue to kind of get diluted to the point where it's no longer your family's business. But I think that, you know, if you find the right partners, you know, they're usually partnering you with for a reason, because they trust you and they believe in you as leaders and entrepreneurs, and they believe in the business model. And there isn't kind of a strong desire to like invest in a company and then totally change everything. And so I think my advice to others is, I think if you're looking to grow quickly and you know, up your game from a professional perspective, it's definitely a viable option for sure.
Yeah, one of the things we negotiated a 40% equity hold on our first sale. Now this time around it was a lot bigger, so we didn't maintain that much equity in the next sale, but we still have equity. And what was interesting, our partners, prospect partners, the individuals in that firm also invested into the new firm. They had such faith in our business plan and business growth opportunity.
So, Bill, you talked about this a little bit already, how maybe the firm is more professional. Do you think that the private equity helped you get a more professional operating organization?
Oh, 100%. I mean, from the leaning into, you know, cleaning up some of the legal and insurance stuff, that was kind of the simple, basic stuff at the beginning, to the push for investment into technology. And certainly in just kind of understanding org chart and executives and senior leadership and who you need and when you need them, and advice on, well, you know, maybe, you know, the talent and where to go find it, you know, all of that. Absolutely.
Yeah, we didn't even have a CFO when we started with them. They said, "Where's your CFO?" And Billy and say, we looked at each other. That's us. So they helped us find that individual, and they worked closely with those individuals, the CFO. So that right there was one thing that we didn't know anything about. We didn't think we needed it, but turned out we did.
So, John, a lot of family businesses, as you well know, have generations of employees, as you guys do. So do you feel that with the investment by the private equity firm, that they now have more opportunity as employees?
That's not the question.
We shared with our employees a substantial portion of the sale. And I'm very proud of that. I tell people that, and they say, "Boy, you guys, that works great." And we have great loyalty, and their opportunity. They see that opportunity. When we were hiring people before for executive positions, I said, "You're getting in here on the ground floor of something that I think is going to be very big." And turns out they were on the ground floor of something that was pretty darn big. A lot of these people joined us when we had 25, 30 properties.
Yeah, I mean, some as low as 8. I mean, a lot of our managers are senior executives now. Ton of growth. I mean, you look at every single one of our regional managers, they were, promoted from within, often started at the sales department, then went to general manager, then went to regional manager. I mean, it's pretty significant for sure. So
Yeah, I always kid. 'Cause I think we have 3 regional managers that started as cart girls on the golf course, and now they're regional managers for us. So that shows you the kind of opportunity. Whenever I talk to someone on the cart, I said, "Well, you have a chance to be a regional manager someday." And I point out the 2 or 3 ladies that are in that position.
So, John, you're now in kind of a consulting business, the golf and consulting business. So, tell us a little bit about where you are in your journey.
Yeah, I don't do any very much consulting anymore. We don't need to. I'm a little older, but I am in the golf business, and with the proceeds from the first sale, we were able to buy one of the golf courses that had one of our Wedgewoods as a lessee. We were going to lose that real fine banquet facility. And the owner said, "John, you need to buy this." And I kept saying, "No, no, no." But finally we did. It was a marginal golf course at the time and not in great shape, but it wasn't old. It was at that time about 20 years old, which that's when stuff starts to break down. That's what I've learned. But we bought it, and we've tripled the revenue since we bought it. We just initiated good, smart marketing practices, fixed up the golf course, hired the right management team. And what happened every time I had a golf course, I'm thinking of Courseco, the first guys we dealt with, we had a bunch of their golf courses. They would ask Bill and I, "You guys are really good at marketing. What would you do?" And I think around, I said, "Well, in the hotels, what did they do? They started giving everybody breakfast. Why don't you give them lunch?" None of these golf operators had the guts to do so. But I said, if I said it all day long, I better do it. And after we initiated it 2 months in, and I had a long-term guy I've known for a long time running the places. He thought he was skeptical. And 2 months later, he said, "John, you're a genius." I said, "No, all I did is copy what the hotels do." And people go around the town, and everybody talks, "Oh, that's the place." They don't say how great the greens are. They do say that later, but they say, "Oh, that's the place you get the free lunch." Of course, it's not free. It's built into the price. Something as simple as that has helped propel us. Plus our hospitality emphasis. The golf course people have a tendency to think, "Oh, come to my golf course. I'm doing a favor for you having a golf course." We look at it as a customer service opportunity, as a hospitality entity.
Yeah, good for you. So, Bill, now that you've got this second tranche of private equity, you're obviously going to do some expansion. Do you want to share with us some of your plans around expansion?
Well, yeah, I think, and ultimately the goal, one thing my father did well, and we've continued, this brand is built on, making a product be the best it possibly can be for the customer. So the customer is always on top with all the decisions. And we feel like the Wedgewood Weddings brand is just ideally suited for, about 75 to 80% of all wedding couples, planning a wedding, given kind of the nature of the all-inclusive offerings and the stress-free planning and the professionalism. And so the idea really is to make this a national brand and kind of expand into, the top 30 metro areas across the United States. And so I think that's the process. That's the goal. I think with this group, we could probably take it from 80 to 160 locations before it'll be time for their investment to go away. So we'll probably, go into, 5, 6, 7 new markets, as well as continue to expand into other markets into the markets we're currently at. And so I think that's really the near-term growth plans over the next 5 years. And, certainly, probably within the next 15 years, if you're in a major metropolitan area, we're, 2.5, 3 million or more in population, there's a good chance you'll have a cluster of Wedgewood Weddings venues at your disposal to help plan and execute your wedding.
It's amazing. Well, to that point, would there be anything that either of you would have done differently along the way, kind of advice to family businesses that are considering this as an option?
Yeah, I would have done it earlier. That's the thing. I would, I'm in my 70s. I wish I was in my 60s, frankly, in the same position. We probably weren't as attractive 10 years earlier, but that's probably the biggest thing. I think we're very blessed. We're not a big family. My daughter works the golf course, and Bill runs this part of the entity of our businesses, and so it's not like I have 3 brothers and sisters and stuff in there, and that's sometimes a challenge with other family businesses. I met a lot of them at our conferences, and they're long generational, and then that might make it a little more difficult. But I really believe in it, and especially if you want to be hands-on totally the rest of your life, well, that's a different story. But if you're really willing to let go and still maintain a little bit of the family equity and still have the same family values, then I think it's very beneficial.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure we would have been ready. Even if we wanted to do it earlier, you need a certain amount of scale and proven ability to repeat and grow before you can kind of be attractive to these private equity groups. If you have kind of a stale top line and bottom line for years and years and years, I think that would be problematic to kind of executing this. But if you're on a pretty logical growth trajectory, it's absolutely attractive. I would have hired an investment banker, although we Prospect Partners is amazing, and I think we couldn't have landed with a better group. But there was so much that we didn't know when we were kind of dealing with that I think if you're not fortunate to have Prospect Partners, it could some of the deal points could have been you could have gotten taken advantage of or gone sideways on some of those things. So I think that would be the biggest thing. And then I would have invested in technology earlier. Usually like the younger generation was like pushing technology, and that just wasn't in the forefront of kind of my mindset. And so we had to clean up a lot of stuff when we were bigger, and it was just harder to implement.
Mm-hmm. Good point. So do either of you have any final comments or words of advice you'd like to share with us?
It's, as I said, it's very important, and Bill kind of mentioned it. We had a lot of help from Troy Gould, our lawyer with them. He helped guide us through that first sale. I don't know how it would have worked, but that's probably the biggest piece of advice. If you're interested in freeing up capital and you're not scared about giving up a little bit of a control, it's a good way to go. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, my dad touched upon it, but this unlocked a ton of opportunity for our people and our team. And I think oftentimes people are worried about, family business. They have an extended family, which is their employees and their team members. And this was actually, I look around at all the people we've hired and promoted and all that, and that wouldn't have been possible without, outside investment and private equity. And they really benefited from that and will continue to benefit as we grow. So.
Yeah, next year, I'm going to write a little book about this whole experience and from soup to nuts, and starting to get notes and talking to some of the people. In fact, I'm having lunch with a couple of our executives today and ask them for some input.
Well, great. We'll be anxious to read it. So I want to thank both of you for being on this podcast today. I find it fascinating, and I think it's going to be so helpful to family businesses across America. So once again, thank you so much for your time and for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you. We're available to speak to anybody. Anybody wants a question or something, give me a call. I'm always free to give advice.
Well, thank you for that. We hope you liked today's show, and if you did, please subscribe to our podcast, where each episode discusses the critical issues affecting family-owned businesses, family offices, and successful individuals around the country. You can find this podcast wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, thank you for listening.